Good afternoon and welcome to Stock Market Today, sponsored by Interactive Brokers. It's Monday, November 11th, and we're live from the Investors Business Daily Studios in Los Angeles. On today's show, we're going to be talking about Tesla, Acadia Pharmaceuticals, both breaking out, and also some strong moves, rebound from JD. But first, let's take a look at the major market indexes. It's Justin Nielsen along with Ed Carson, and Ed, it was a day that was down most of the day, but it kind of came back, snapped back a little bit. So there was some news from China early in the day, and the way that the indexes ended, S&P 500 down only 0.2%, Composite down only 0.1%, Dow Jones Industrials up actually just slightly.
Yeah, the Dow got a boost from Boeing, but part of it is that the market, you could sort of argue that we're due for sort of a leveling off, at least that. I mean, if nothing else, and so because we've risen 5 or 6 weeks in a row.
Yeah.
Here's the Nasdaq. You can see how it's gone. Since early October, and finally cleared above that. The real key is, can we hold above those old highs from July and before that, especially things like the S&P and Dow, which really haven't risen much since early 2018.
Right.
We had some negative news. There's Hong Kong unrest that hit the China markets. And, while Singles Day sales, and we'll get into that a little bit more, were strong, some of those stocks opened sort of poorly. That means they generally closed okay, but, in the lead, but they closed okay, the leading stocks closed okay, there were a few breakouts or stocks moving back into buy zone, so it was actually a fairly positive session. Yeah,
and we'll get into the volume a little bit. Of course, today is Veterans Day, so thank you very much for all of those service members. But it did mean that the bond markets were closed, the stock market was still open, but sometimes volume is a little bit lighter on those days where a lot of people are on vacation. So first up is Tesla. So Tesla, now this is one that we talk about often in the office, sometimes good, sometimes bad. Yeah. But at this point, it's looking like it's kind of getting up to a breakout level, right?
Yeah, it got above a handle buy point. It was a very deep base. It surged higher on earnings. You could sort of say that was almost a bottoming base, but that base was almost entirely below the 200-day line.
Right.
So, okay, and it was really deep in the base too. So it's now above, this little handle. This is a weekly chart, so you can sort of see the whole consolidation. The handle's a little more obvious on a daily chart, but it's just above midpoint of the base, and there is a lot of overhead resistance. I mean, so that is something to be careful about with any stock, regardless of if this were Tesla or anything, with a stock like this. So it's moving above there. It is actionable. It's just something that a base that deep and with that kind of overhead resistance is something to be cautious about. But there was positive news today.
Yes, and what was that news?
Oh, it was a price target hike, I think, from Jefferies, raising it from 300 to 400, which would be a big increase. And they also, Tesla showed off some of its Model 3s that it made at its Shanghai factory. Right. It'll be interesting to see when they can really produce volume from that, but because that'll be really key. So those were a couple pieces of news that pushed it above. It moved into buy zone. The volume was okay, and so we'll see. People. I've been skeptical of this at a time, but this is acting well right now.
Yeah, and at a certain point, you have to kind of look at what the chart is doing.
Absolutely.
And as you mentioned, that whole China market, and we'll get into that with Singles Day as well. Yeah, it's a very large market,
so
that cannot be overstated. So that overhead resistance, it looks like, is around 387. So we got about 40 points to go, a little bit over 10%, in order to get to those old highs from previously. Let's go ahead and move on now. Acadia Pharmaceuticals. This is one that Arusha brought up on IBD Live today as it was breaking out, and it had a very strong finish. Looks like that one was up over 6%, is where it closed, up 6.2%, and a breakout.
Yeah, and Ken Shreve, markets writer, we were on Friday, we were thinking about bringing this up because it was setting up nicely, but it's like, boy, biotechs are scary. So we did take a look at a biotech ETF, but this was very strong action. Now, if you look to the left-hand side of there was a huge gap up. It was like 63% on September 9th. They stopped short a clinical trial on a psychosis drug because it was doing so well. They're going to file for FDA approval earlier than expected. So that's still going well. The stock breaking out apparently didn't seem to be on any real news. So nice action here. And it was just moving out.
Yeah, that's a pretty unusual thing, to stop a clinical trial because it's doing so well. I mean, how often does that happen?
Yeah.
So pretty incredible. Of course, that buy point was at 44.20, and again, it's looking very strong now. We were kind of talking about volume earlier today on Acadia Pharmaceuticals, and that it didn't look like it was going to be too impressive, but keep in mind there was a lot of volume on that huge gap up, and so really when you look at the recent activity, this was much higher than Friday and much higher than we've seen in the recent action.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's go ahead and let's talk a little bit more. Get back to China, JD.com. You talked about Alibaba on Friday with Singles Day coming up. Now, what's going on with Singles Day? Why is it so important?
Well, I mean, it's the biggest e-commerce event in the world. It's bigger than Amazon Prime and Cyber Monday together, easily. I mean, not even close. I mean, it's like Alibaba reported over $38 billion worth of sales. JD also had a record, big growth rates for both of them. Alibaba's in a buy zone, but so is JD.com. Now, both of them came below their buy points intraday. It looks like JD, I think, closed slightly higher. It was just sort of nice action, testing the buy point. We saw this with Alibaba, JD, a few others like AMD, which had nothing to do with the e-commerce event. So this was just positive. And now we don't really know who's the real winner because there's huge discounts. So we don't know how much this is going to filter down to the bottom line. But it's also a good sign for the Chinese economy, Chinese consumers. So when you talk about Tesla, when you think about Apple, which probably sold a lot of iPhones at this event as well, this is really, it was a positive sign for a lot of reasons. So
trickles to a lot of areas of consumerism.
Yes, as a huge luxury event. This is the big one.
And of course, that JD got right to its buy point, kind of got support right there, and it closed basically flat for the day, down just slightly. So
nice action there.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, that's going to do it for us on stocks today. A couple things you should be aware of. We've been talking a lot about our IBD Live service that has just started on Wednesday of last week. So for information on that, investors.com/IBD Live. Ed is one of the regulars. I will be on tomorrow. Ed was very busy today. You were also on investing strategies, so you had quite a bit going on.
I'm trying to get to all the various video spots. You're the only one to have gotten them all, I think. We talked about Acadia as it was breaking out.
Yes.
We've talked about Alibaba as it was breaking out. A number of these is like we're putting them out, we're noticing them. A lot of the people who are viewers, who are watching, they're coming up with ideas, asking questions, and sometimes they're noticing things moving.
Absolutely.
Because these are very involved, active investors.
Very savvy investors.
It's really nice to get that collaboration, not just within the newsroom, but the whole community.
Yeah. So definitely check that out. That starts at 6:20 a.m. Pacific time, and that's 9:20 on Eastern time. Also, keep in mind that we do have a webinar coming up that will be on November 14th, and it's Two Wizards of Wall Street. That is going to be Mark Minervini and David Ryan will join Arusha. Both of the guys, well, all three of the guys are very, very good at what they do. And actually, David Ryan was the very first seminar that I ever went to. It was David Ryan and Bill O'Neill. This was back in November of '97. So I have a soft spot for David Ryan personally. So Arusha will be hosting that webinar, and do check it out. Again, it's on November 14th at 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. That'll do it for us today. We will see you right back here tomorrow.